Once we have an understanding, a real understanding of what the Ramchal means by an infinite being, how God has no form, no shape, no size, as we've already seen quite well, we recognize that when we open up the Torah and we see God's interaction with the world through the descriptions of Torah, it's very confusing. God gets angry. God takes the Jews out of Egypt with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. God gets jealous when the Jewish people go and worship other gods. How do we understand that? So on the one hand, we can't say it literally means God has eyes and ears and arms. I don't think any one of us actually think, when the Torah says that God took the Jews out of Egypt, I don't think that any one of us consider that this huge arm came out of the sky and took the Jews out of Egypt. We understand that on some level it's obviously a metaphor. At the same time, the Torah is using a very specific description of God to say that God, in some sense, has this arm or has these eyes. So we can't just dispose of the Torah's notion and say, forget it, it doesn't mean it. We can't take it too literally, because otherwise we're saying God has a form and God has physicality. How do we deal with it? So we have a concept in Torah called an anthropomorphism. The way the rabbis describe it is the rabbis say, Dibra Torah belashon b'nei Adam. The Torah speaks to us in our language. And it's more than just saying that it's a metaphor. It's more than just saying that metaphorically it's as if God has an arm. What the Torah is really referring to is that when God is describing himself to us, he's describing himself to us using things that we can relate to. Because we have eyes, so God uses a description of himself as being able to see. Because we have arms, and our arms have power, God uses a description of him having arms to take the Jews out of Egypt. But it goes much deeper than that. We have to realize that it's not the case that God creates us with eyes and arms and jealousy and anger, and then decided to describe himself that way. We understand that the Torah is a blueprint for creation, which means God's original plan from the beginning was to give us eyes and arms and traits like jealousy and anger. Why? Because God gave us those tools, those metaphors in our lives to understand him, to understand God on a deeper level. What am I really saying? What I'm really saying is that in a sense, God really does have eyes. They're not little eyes like ours. They don't have a little pupil and they don't have a retina like ours. They don't have optical nerves behind them like ours. But in a sense, God really sees. Why did God give us eyes? So that we would have an example in our physical world of what vision really is. Our eyes are the metaphor, not God's. Our arms are a metaphor for what power is and what strength and what control are. And God gave us those arms so that when we see in the Torah a description of arms, we understand how to relate to it. God, in a sense, has power. And that power is connoted by the idea of arms. So in reality, it all switches around. We are living the metaphor, and God is the one having the reality. That's the Jewish concept of an anthropomorphism.